Welcome everybody to tonight's webinar with our special guests, Joe and Dante Girardi, as we discussed developing today's players, and thought that video really set the tone for where we're going today. And it's funny because Joe, on that video there, you said Dante was a 16-year-old kid when that video happened, and you're waiting to see him grow up. Well, here he is. He's grown up. He's ready to go, and you set him up for success. And so, looking back on that video, what's the first thing that came to mind there, Joe, as that video was playing for you?
I think how time fast goes. All the work that my son put in. He loved the game, and he was a young man that had a dream of playing in the big leagues, but it's so few and far between of people that get an opportunity to do it. But it wasn't from lack of work, and that's why I'm so proud of him.
Yeah, that's awesome. And, just to look back on that and as a father, be able to see, where time has gone and how that's transitioned. And Dante, to look at that video and see what your dad was saying there when you were 16 years old. What does that mean to you today? Looking back on that, how did that help you, knowing this is what he thought about me when I was 16?
It's interesting, when he said, I have a son that's 16, I was just thinking back to when I was 16 years old, and, how different times were, and, being in the game at 16 and playing. I always say to myself, I wish I would have listened to him more, but I think as he was my dad, it was tough. He's obviously, as I've grown up and gotten older, I see how far ahead he is of any baseball person I've ever spoken to. He's very, I think, soft-spoken and doesn't, show that too much. But just thinking back, for when I was 16, if I would have taken some things and not been so, oh, it's my dad, I think it would have been different. But he gave me everything he could to help me succeed, and he's done more than he could ever imagine.
That's awesome, and great to hear. And it gives you such pride, both as a father and as a son, to see where things have gone. And that's where we want to go with this conversation tonight. So welcome everybody. We're glad you could join us tonight. And for those of you that are going to be on the replay, welcome whenever you do come to this information. And hopefully you have something that you could take away from this evening as we dive in and discuss a little bit about today's player and developing today's player, and where the trajectory of development has gone and will go, and what's really important. And one of the things that we're so proud to be able to do at Post-Grad Edge is bring this type of development to players all across the country with our different campuses that are going to be this year and in the coming years for post-grad opportunities. And so quickly, just want to give you a quick overview of Post-Grad Edge and what that looks like and why we exist. Myself, and I've been in this game for 27 years now as a coach and as a developer of players, and still coach at the junior college level today. And what we found is a tremendous need for extra development for players based on so many factors, whether it's extra large rosters at the college level, lack of playing opportunities, scholarship opportunities that just aren't there where people think they are, whether a player is undersized, underdeveloped, maybe there was an injury their junior or senior year and they need to rehab. Whatever the case is, there's a need for an extra year of development. And that's what we serve. But it's not just on the field. It's off the field. It's putting quality people around your players and helping them understand what life skills are, helping them understand time management, helping them take college courses. And that's one thing that is understanding that all of these players are going to go on to do something at some point in their lives, and we want to give them as much preparation as we can. So we put them in a college environment. We play a college schedule. They start in September, they go until May, they take college courses. And now they can take up to 9 hours without starting their athletic eligibility. And so it gives us an opportunity to teach players what it's like to be a college player, but develop on a professional scale. And that's why we're bringing in partnerships like with Girardi Sports and what Joe and Dante are doing to be able to share that experience with players and help them understand what it feels like to have somebody that believes in them and is behind them and is really encouraging their development into whatever stage that may be. And each player's a little bit different and each path is a little bit different. And so the way that we feel passionate about it is the way our partners feel passionate about it. And that's why we wanted to have this conversation tonight. And I wanted to bring on Paul Pribella. Paul is our co-owner here at Grad Edge, really brought this to life. And I want him to share with you quickly the reason why he is so passionate about providing this level of opportunity and these level of partnerships for everybody that comes involved with Post-Grad Edge. So Paul, I'm gonna hang up and listen here and mute myself so that you can take it from there.
Welcome, everybody. The reason that I started Post-Grad Edge, first of all, is personal. It's not just a business for me. It's personal because my son is actually going through post-grad right now and just finishing up. The thing is that he graduated 2 years ago at the age of 17 and would have entered into college at the age of 17. And I didn't know what to do with him, to be honest with you. I mean, he really had no choices. He just came, Scott Baker, who's on this call tonight, was his high school coach his senior year. They won a state championship, and my son really had no options. And I was stuck. The other thing is I really didn't have any knowledge whatsoever of what to do with my son. Chris Capozzi, my partner here, suggested post-grad. I didn't even know what post-grad was, to be honest with you. However, he navigated my son through it. And you're talking about a 17-year-old kid, maybe 135 pounds wet, that had no options, and gave him the 2 years that he needed to develop. Some might only need one. He needed two because he was only 17. Now he got a really good offer from a D2 school. He's starting in the middle of August. He got a great scholarship, great academic money. Ended up getting $35,000 a year, from nothing to $35,000 a year, and is going to be a starting pitcher there. So I saw the development. And as a parent, I think what's important for me, I can't do everything for my son. But having the knowledge of what to do with him and giving him those opportunities was extremely important for me. So I wanted to develop Post-Grad Edge because I want those kids around the country to have the same opportunities as my son. The other thing is developing these webinars. And we're going to be doing these meetings weekly because I also want to give the opportunity for parents, coaches, and such to be able to understand what the current environment is, and to be able to navigate through that. And, you know, for their children and their them that proper advice is, this is what you can expect, and this route, this is what you can expect. So it's twofold. Once again, for the parents, for the coaches, and for the players, to give them those opportunities as parents, like I did with my son. And I will tell you this, my son is completely rejuvenated. He went from just not maybe understanding, you know, what he could do, to now being motivated in the sense that he has a new passion for the game. And I can't tell you that the world to me. So anyways, I hope you guys get a lot of information from this, and, you know, good luck on your future paths. But if Post-Grad can help you in any way, we will be here to help you. Yeah.
All right. That's a tremendous oversight there, Paul, on what we're doing and why we're doing it. And so part of that is having these partnerships in place. And we couldn't be more excited to be able to be partnered with such an organization like Girardi Sports, who's really passionate about bringing a big league experience to players. And that's certainly we want our players to feel, with the highest level quality of products, the highest level of service, and then each player feels that somebody's behind them and cares about them. So Dante, you want to walk us through a little bit and give us an overview of Girardi Sports and your passion, where you're going with it, and where we're expected to have this partnership together. So Dante, take it from here.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, obviously I have a little bit of a different upbringing than most kids. I grew up in a professional locker room, and that was what I was used to. So I saw a lot of different things. I watched how professionals are treated, and you know, I went through my career, played baseball down here in Florida, played high school baseball, and then went off to FIU, which I just graduated, and played baseball there for 3 years as well. And I think the background of the business and you know, the whole grand scheme of the business is to give everyone the equal playing field and giving everyone the best opportunity to succeed in their in their endeavors for baseball. And the way we do that is, we base how kids receive their equipment and apparel and accessories like a professional. So, as a professional, they get, stuff every single week in their locker, more stuff than you could possibly imagine. And that's where our business comes into play. We have an unrivaled price point. We do a lot of really cool things. We're rolling out a lot of interesting programs and going to help a lot of kids. And one of the things we wanted to do was team up with you guys, and we liked what you were doing as a brand and what you're doing for kids. And I think it aligns very well with what we're doing and trying to give these kids this opportunity to succeed. And through giving kids the best equipment and apparel possible at unbelievable price points and delivering it to them monthly is something we really take
Absolutely, and
seriously.
it's tremendous part. Boy, I tell you what, we're going to go through some batting gloves with our group, right?
Yeah.
And everybody should, right? I mean, we start talking about development, we get into this conversation about repetition and the amount of swings that a guy should have, and like the days of just getting the calluses and taping it up and saying good luck. We can burn through some BGs and let's do it, right? Let's get after it on that side of it, and that's really where we want to take this conversation, spend the bulk of today. And we're so excited to have such a legend when it comes to the world of development and coaching, and his tremendous playing career. Has a few World Series championships, few All-Star appearances, things like that under his belt. And so, we're so excited to be able to have Joe Girardi on this call and share with us what it's like trying to develop today's player, because, Joe, it's a little bit different than when you were playing, right?
Yeah, it's much different today because kids are rushed today to every level. And when I think about development, it comes down to really two things: repetition and recovery. And when I talk about repetition, it's swings, it's ground balls, it's playing catch where you're aiming at a small spot. You aim small, miss small. Everything you should do is about trying to get 1% better that day. It's working on breaking ball machines. It's working on high velocity. And the other part is the recovery part. And the recovery part is so many different areas. It's making sure you do the cold baths, making sure that you lift your weights, making sure that you eat right, that you drink enough liquids, that you sleep enough, right? It's the mental recovery, which is probably maybe just as important as anything that you're going to do. And I grew up in an era where we didn't really have mental conditioning. But as a manager, I did, and it was so important to the players because there is so much failure and there is so much pressure on kids today because they have to deal with this. Like when I played and made an error, the 22 people in the stands saw it. Today, millions of people might see it because in a lot of ways, people are either mean or they think it's entertaining or they're so happy that their team won that kids get embarrassed. So I would tell kids that mental conditioning and that mental toughness and the mind games that this game causes. I was around Paul O'Neill. Paul O'Neill was one of the best hitters and one of the most intense players I was ever around. And he would talk about never giving up an at bat. And his wife Neville said he would wake up at 4 a.m, scream, "Am I ever going to get a hit again?" and then go right back to sleep. Right? I mean, this is what this stupid hitting does to us, right? And for pitchers, making sure you take care of your arm, making sure that you're honest. Being honest with coaches is so important today because coaches a lot of times will push you as far as they can push you because they're trying to win. But as parents and as a coach, it's important that we protect players from themselves. Sometimes players don't know. I think about I was a grown man and I was in incredible shape when I was 24, 25 years old. And when the season was over, I took a month off of no weights, no conditioning, no baseball activities. I just rested. So from October to November, it was all rest. In November, I started lifting weights. I didn't pick up a baseball until January 1st. So imagine a guy that's in the big leagues is taking 3 months off because of the importance of recovery, because of the grind. And then in January, I would start throwing and I'd start taking swings. And here's the other thing. I wouldn't run. I was blessed with a body where I didn't have to run. I got my cardio through my lifting that until a week before spring training, because I knew the pounding that my knees was going to take during the season. Now, guys catch much different today. They catch on one knee and it saves their knees and it saves their body and it saves their energy. But this is a very physical game, and we don't think of it as a physical game, but it's a game that it's one explosive activity after another. You think about, okay, the windup's slow, so slow, and then it's pow, right? You think about a swing, it's a load, and then it's pow. You think about when you throw, you get in it and you get your arm up, and then you let it's a series of explosive injuries that you have to train for. So I believe explosive training is really important. And the reason that I'm on this call is I really believe in what everyone is doing here. Post grad, I believe in what they're doing because I was the kid that was 17 that went to college. I put on 25 pounds my first year of college. I was thin, but I could have used probably an extra year, but I was fortunate because I was able to put it on pretty quick. But I was a skinny kid, and it was probably because I was always playing something. But I was not ready for the college game when I went, and I had to figure it out. But I believe in what my son is doing because he knows firsthand that a lot of kids just don't get the equipment. And how do you practice if you don't have the equipment? How do you deal with blisters on your hands and expect to hit well? It doesn't happen. So for me, yes, you have to do the little things really well. And I think it's important that you understand you have to be a great self-evaluator of who you are. So if you're 5'10" and 165 pounds, you're probably not going to have the power of Aaron Judge. So you got to figure out something that you do really well. They're looking for tools, right? And it could be a contact tool. I think about a guy like Stephen Kwan. He's not a power hitter, but he's doing great because he has speed and he has great bat to ball skills, you know? And when you get a guy that has all the tools, kind of like a Juan Soto as a hitter, it's bat to ball, it's power, right? It's an eye, but you got to figure out who you are and try not to be something that you're not. And I think too many people say, well, you got to hit for power. You got to hit for power. You got to hit for power. And then all of a sudden, you don't make contact and you always strike out. You're not very good to your team. So learn how to hit for contact. Power comes later in life when you become a man. And it's the same thing with pitching. I think about developing pitchers today. Everyone's into power, 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 right? You know that if we're driving 75 on a highway and someone goes by us at 85, it doesn't look very fast. But if we're going at 45 and they go by at 85, it looks really fast. So the more we see something, the more we become accustomed to being able to accomplish it. So if you see velocity all the time, you're going to accomplish it. Think about some of the best starters this year in the major leagues. You can say that Ranger Suarez, he might tap out at 95, 94. You can talk about Shota Imanaga, he tops out at 92. So when I think about pitching, you need to create deception. And who tells you if you have deception? The hitters will tell you if you have deception, not some darn spin rate, right? You can go in the lab, right? And you can, I believe in that too. You develop pitches and you develop shapes of pitches. But hitters will always tell you what you need to work on. Just like pitchers will always tell hitters what they need to work on. So development comes in playing the game. So what we want on both sides, whether it's post grad or it's Girardi Sports, we want you to have the ability to play the game as much as you can. But I'm going to tell you, you have to recover physically. You should take one day off a week, no matter what, where you do absolutely nothing. And it might be a parent, it might be a coach, it might be a teammate that has to force someone to do it. But this is a game of a lot of repetition. swing after swing after swing, ground ball after ground ball after ground ball. Now, as a pitcher, you have to be careful because you can't go throw 200 pitches every day or you'll blow out. But when you play catch, you can work on your changeup by just throwing it, by just grabbing it. You can work on your command by aiming for a small dot on a person's body. There are so many things that you can do in this game where you don't actually have to be playing, but you can do it. I think about what hitters do today. You know, you have the 60 feet, you know, from home plate to the pitcher's mound, and you get in there and you hit a 92-mile-an-hour fastball in the cage. What do? They move up. So now it's 102. What do? Then they move up. It's 112. And they get to the point where it's 150 miles an hour. So when you go back to 90, it looks like it's nothing. What do they do on curveballs? They hit curveballs for strikes, right? Then they move up. So they recognize it's up in the zone. Then they move back behind home plate. So it's below the zone. You got to create atmospheres where players can train and get used to seeing things, because the more breaking balls you see as a hitter, the better hitter you're going to be. The more high fastballs or velocity fastballs you see, you're going to be better in the game. And I think that's part of why AAA players who come to the big leagues struggle so much. They struggle because they don't see the elite pitching, right? So they're hitting 310 with a 400 on base percentage and a 550 slug, and they're at 960 OPS, and people think they're coming to the big leagues to hit 960. Most players end up getting sent back down. Think about the players that came up. Jackson Holliday came up and really struggled. He's going to be a good player, but he had to find out. He had to find out at the big league level what he was doing in the minor leagues wasn't going to work. So what am I talking about? You got to compete to find out what you're going to work on. And when you fail, it's not a failure, right? It's just a guideline of what you need to do better and what you need to work on. High leg kicks don't work very often in the big leagues. They work in the minor leagues because a lot of times there's not a lot of velocity and there's not a lot of big breaking balls, and the elite stuff is not there. Because if you got elite stuff, you're in the big league. So they find out. Bryson Stott was a guy. I had Bryson Stott when he came up with the Phillies. Really good hitter in the minor leagues. Big leg kick, no two-strike approach, right? He got chewed up, spit out, sent back to the minor leagues. Kevin Long, the great hitting coach, gave him a process and told him, this is what you got to do. Now I believe it's a kid that could win the batting title and will be an all-star at some point. So what I'm saying is, when you develop, you have to compete as well. Don't just get caught up in going, and trying to shape your pitches or hitting off a machine. You have to play games, and post-grad gives you that. And I'm sure they give you the opportunity to eat well and to sleep well and to recover well. Don't take that for granted. I know you're 17, 18, 19. You think you're invincible? You're not, right? It's hard when you don't physically feel good to compete at your highest level.
That is just absolute gold right there, Joe. And I hope everybody's paying attention and taking great notes. We're going to have a little Q&A time after this, so be sure to drop in some of those questions into the chat, and we'll open it up for some live questions too. But, boy, there's a lot to unpack right there. And, you start thinking about, you were mentioning the difference between even, AAA and the big leagues. And, we have some people on this call that have experienced that and gone through that personally. But I want to tie that to what we're doing and looking at the difference between a high school player today and what this Division I mentality is. And they have to go to Division I. There's 25, 26-year-old grown men at the Division I level, and there's 17-year-olds coming out of high school. So if we're talking about the difference if somebody's ready at AAA versus the big leagues, holy cow, how is a 17-year-old going to be able to compete with a 25-year-old? We're talking the difference between rookie ball in the big leagues on the age gap there between 17 and 25. I mean, let's talk a little bit about that. And Dante, you can jump in on this because you experienced it as a Division I athlete at FIU down there as you were going through it and coming through from the high school side. And let's talk about that. What does that look like for today's player? And so Dante, if you could share your experience a little bit, and then Joe, if you could talk about that from as we were starting to talk about what's important in the development side, what are those things that a high school player today really needs to be honed in on if they want to have success? And then an extra year sounds pretty good, right? So the post-grad level, post-grad edge sounds pretty good to get that extra year in there. So let's talk through that. So Dante, you want to go ahead and share that a little bit and your experience being on the Division I level, what you learned, and how hard that is to compete on that level.
Yeah, I think I had an interesting experience. I graduated in 2020, so COVID year. So my first year was the year after COVID, which opened up a can of worms. So I got into college. I was 18 when I got into college, and I was competing with a 25-year-old, just like you said, for a position, and I ended up winning the position, but the gap between my freshman year to even my sophomore year, yet alone my junior year, was, I mean, tremendous. I think that the confidence level of coming in and just looking at yourself and looking out on the field, even passing the eye test of, I look like I belong here. I look like I should be here. That's really important for your confidence. I think my freshman year, I was always in really good shape. I had good genetics growing up. But I probably played at about 170 my freshman year. And then my junior year, my last year of college baseball, I was playing at like 195. So that you don't realize the difference there, but there's a big difference there. And, obviously maturing wise, yet alone for the physicality of things, a 25-year-old has just played more baseball than you. So as you continue to mature and you're in more experiences in the game of baseball, you learn more. So it's hard to compete for sure. And that there's definitely a big gap there between those kids coming out of high school and fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh year guys in college.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think kids today have an advantage, but it's also a disadvantage. It works both ways. And I think your decision making becomes really, really important. What's the advantage? You can transfer and you don't have to sit down. But think about it. If you're a coach, you're going to want the most mature players. So all these kids come in the transfer portal. And as a freshman coming in, if you're at a school that brings a lot of transfers, it's going to be hard to play. Well, how do you get better if you're not playing the game? It's really hard. Yeah, you can take ground balls and you can improve your hands and your footwork and you can work off machines, but there's no substitute for live competition. I mean, that is where you truly find out if what you're working on is working and I am getting better, or I'm staying the same and I got to approach it a different way. It's all that development. And the development shows in the games. And I think when you're thinking about where you're going and how you want to develop, you've got so many opportunities to go to post-grad, to go to a smaller school, and then transfer 2 years later after you've got 120 games under your belt because you started 60 as a freshman and 60 as a sophomore, instead of sitting and going to a big program and not developing and having to get all your development in the summer. There's no substitute, I can tell you, for at-bats. There is none. And one of the things that I think we're seeing in the big leagues, because kids are being rushed to the big leagues, I mean, think about it. How many good teams are there? There's not a whole lot. I think there's 2 in the American League and maybe 2 in the National League. And everyone else is mediocre, right? And they sign high-priced free agents and they bring a bunch of young kids up that aren't ready for the big leagues. It's what's happening. It's because they don't have the repetition. I can't express to you enough that go where you're going to play, and don't think, man, I'm not going to a Division I and a Power 5 school. Don't think that. Go say, man, I'm going to go get a great education, and I'm going to go where I'm going to play. And Dante was fortunate. He got to play from day one, but it wasn't easy. And his team was a bunch of young freshmen and then a bunch of 24 and 25-year-olds. So it was not a good atmosphere because there's really nothing a 24-year-old has in common with an 18-year-old. There isn't. So you got to think about the atmosphere that you're going. I think about if you go to like You're going to be around a bunch of 18 and 19-year-olds, kids all your age. If you go to a school where they don't bring in transfers, there's going to be, 8 freshmen, 8 sophomores, 8 juniors, and 8 seniors. There's going to be peer groups that you're close to, and it's really important because part of recovery and part of this development is, and I don't mean to discredit coaches. And I just told my daughter this in basketball the other day. I said, there's a lot of times you can learn more from a teammate in 5 minutes than you learn from a coach in an hour. I mean, it's the bottom line. I mean, like Mariano Rivera taught Roy Halladay as cutter. Game over. We were all mad at Mariano because I was managing the Yankees and we never beat Roy Halladay after that. But players can teach because they're talking the language. They're the same age. They're going through the same heartaches and difficulties and everything. And, like you could say to, like I could say to Chris, I mean, Chris, you see this guy. What do you see off this guy? I don't see this picture. I can't pick it up. And I'm going to say, what are you looking for? And those are the things that you can do. And it becomes easier when you're around your peer group and your age group. So, for all the parents, the kids that are on this call, I'm telling you, go where you're going to play because that's where you're going to get better. And you can always get to a Power 5 school your junior and senior year if you've improved. And you might be ahead of a lot of kids because you had the reps. So don't get caught in the name. Get caught up in where you can play.
Yeah, that's tremendous advice right there. And that's why we exist at Post Grad Edge. And as a JUCO coach as well, I see that every day. I see that with our players every day. On the junior college level, it's very different than what it used to be as well. And so, the opportunity to develop those repetitions that you're talking about is something that you're not going to get if you go to a school that has a 70-man roster. There's just not enough time to go around. There's not enough coaches to go around. There's not enough daylight to go around. And then if you add on the practice hour requirements that the NCAA has, and you're really stuck, and you end up only working out with your same workout partner all the time, right? And that's what you got to lean on. So as we see this continue, there's a couple of people on this call today that I wanted to also bring into the conversation. And Ryan Ripken's on the call. And Ryan is actually on TV in Baltimore with the Orioles. You may recognize that name, but had a tremendous career himself. Went through this as a player and is now working in development in helping players on a daily basis. It's when it comes to repetition, Ryan, I wanted you to jump in on that conversation and talk with Joe a little bit on that side too, as what you're seeing on a daily basis as you're in the cage working with these players and one day our players as well as we get moving here, what that looks like. And what are players really needing today? And based off of what Joe was saying in the repetition, where do you go with that? So Ryan, if you could jump in on that, that'd be great.
Joe and Dante talked about it, extensively. The game has changed, but a lot of things still need to be more reinforced. And for the kids that are younger, it's really, how do you deal with failure, self-awareness, mental self-awareness, and being able to put yourself in a position to go out and have success, because everyone knows if you have the luxury, I shouldn't say the luxury, if you have the ability and you have the success to keep moving forward with your career, it doesn't get easier. The failure gets harder. And a lot of the young players, especially a lot of these young Orioles, I heard you talk about Jackson Holliday, learning to deal with failure is the toughest thing that an athlete, I think, can deal with, because you feel like you should excel constantly. And the reality is you're not going to. And so I watched Jackson firsthand up here, and I remember everyone standing, giving him a standing ovation, every single at bat. And I'm thinking, man, I'm sitting next to my dad. We're both clapping, and we both sit right back down. And I had some people text me because they saw us sit down. And what are you doing? I go, well, he's already got enough pressure on him. Let him go play ball, right? And that was the first time talking to him, and Matt Holliday was saying that he felt the pressure. And it was the first time that Jackson, in his entire professional and amateur life career, was dealing with failure, was dealing with it magnified, that he wasn't living up to an expectation. And that's the high pinnacle of it, right? That we're looking at the number one overall prospect, very talented player, but that's at any level of any player trying to make it to the next level. So when you're looking at that in that discussion, and a lot of young people, especially nowadays, it's easy to compare to what someone else is doing. But the reality is you got to find what works for you first and learn how to develop that on a day-to-day basis. Another example, because you're talking about colleges, if I can make a quick point about that. I went to South Carolina my freshman year, and it was right when Ray Tanner left, and South Carolina's off World Series appearances and titles. And I went there, and you feel like this is a place that knows baseball, right? And they have talent. They bring in talent. And they had a new coach come in. And I was frustrated at the time, but I understand that I wasn't ready to play. I wasn't. But the coach also chose some guys that had higher upside to sit on the bench rather than play. Sorry, they started the guys that had more experience than rather than guys that had more upside because they knew what they had and their jobs were on the line. So I saw a lot of talented players miss out on an opportunity because they weren't getting the reps that they needed. And so this conversation can be, I'll stop there in a second, but the one thing that I do want to emphasize, baseball is a game that you learn as you go. And for players that I saw, especially for these young Orioles and players that are going through it, a lot of the other young players, the quicker that you can learn yourself, the better off you're going to be. But the only way you can do that is if you're willing to be open-minded, if you're willing to put in the effort, but also willing to understand that it's not a matter of if you're going to fail, it's a matter of when and how quickly can you try to get out of it. My dad played for a long time, not just because he was a talented player. Yeah, he had the skills, but if you sit down with him, and I hope you'd have a notebook, it can be exhausting. But the biggest thing that he focused on was if something was going wrong, how can I try to flip the script? And if I'm still being bogged down, how can I get myself out of it? Because even for him, he had moments where he sat there and goes, I don't know what I'm doing. But that's not an acceptable answer. The answer to him was, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to keep working to figure it out. So I'll leave it with that for this part.
That's awesome right there, Ryan. Thanks for jumping in on that. And you know, hearing that, and Joe and Dante, please jump in on this too. You know, one of the things that we're talking about is providing these opportunities for these players to get that extra year in between high school and college. And as we're talking about the pressure on them, and we're talking about being able to play and being able to develop and having the tools like Girardi Sports is going to be able to provide for them equipment-wise, and having the development and the lessons that we're able to provide for them. Guys, how do you think how much of a difference do you think that can really make for somebody? That's what that's the magical question, right? Each kid develops on their own a little bit differently, but you know, we hear Dante's story. Joe, we heard your story at 17. Ryan, your story going into college. If post-grad existed when you guys were around and post-grad edge was an option, what do you think that may have, obviously we don't know, but what do you think that may have done for a career or an opportunity physically, mentally, emotionally, the whole bit? How do you think that would impact a player? Not any of the three of you, feel free to jump in on that.
I think it's huge. I think when you're in high school and you're being recruited and you're going through the I don't want to say bribery, obviously, because that's not the word, but it's, we have this, we present this to you, this is how we are as a program. The coach is going to be on his, he's going to give you he's going to put his best foot forward on those calls. He's going to put, everything he has out to get you there. And I think it's such an exciting time when you're being recruited, especially, if you get the opportunity to be recruited by a D1 school. It's such an exciting time. Even D2, D3, just being wanted by a coach is really an amazing time. And I think what kids don't think about is this decision has a chance to end my baseball career. That's the reality of it. If you go here and things don't go well, it's decision making, right? So that's a huge decision, and you're so stuck in the excitement of it all because it's such an exciting time that, this is probably most definitely the biggest decision you've had to make in your baseball career by far. And being able to self-evaluate, like they've spoken about, to saying, okay, can I see myself playing here in 3 months? right? Because that's what it's going to come down to. Or even a year. Can I see myself playing here in a year? And if that answer is no, then you need to be very careful, because I know it's exciting and it's great, but at the end of the day, this could be where your line ends and your career is over. So I think it's the decision-making process it needs to be very thorough, and you have to be able to step out of yourself for a second and look at and say, okay, if I was recruiting, what would I want? Would I recruit myself? And if, and being a really good self-evaluator, and the goal is to get to the big league. So if you have to, take an extra year to get there, would you do it? If I told you, if you went to post grad, you took that year, now you're in the big leagues because you gave yourself that time, would it all be worth it? And do you care where you went to school? They're going to say no. So I think the decision-making process is really important, and it's hard, as a 17 and 18-year-old to make that decision.
So I'm going to take you back, because I'm the oldest here. So I'm going to go back to 1982 when I signed my letter of intent June of my senior year. I wasn't really recruited hard until my senior year. Life has changed, right? So for me, the coaches were different back then than they are now today. Sports in college is a big business, and it's all about wins and losses. And you have to be really careful. And what I know today, is repetition is so important, right? And I was fortunate. I had a great coach that invested in me. But we had three coaches for 30 players, right? They have 10 basketball coaches in college for 12 players, right? It's baseball. You need teaching, you need repetition, and it's hard to get today because there's so many players. And as soon as you sign that letter of intent, they move to the next guy, because all their, and I don't begrudge them. It's different. But you want leadership that's going to offer love to you, that truly cares about you, that truly believes in you and wants what's best for you, not how many wins they have, not throwing a pitcher too many days in a row. I watch the college playoffs. Man, they're just asking to hurt players because it's money, right? And it really bothers me. I mean, if you go there at post grad, you're not going to play 5 days in a row and have to win 5 games in a row in 5 days and have to use so many pitchers. I mean, big league teams have a hard time when you play 5 days in a row, not making a move and calling up a pitcher so you have a fresh arm. You can't do that in college. So I think I would have got so much more repetition and probably would have been advanced and physically would have been advanced, because I was 17 years old, and I didn't turn 18 until October of my freshman year. I was a skinny kid that, took some lumps my first year. It helped me, but the important thing was I got to play. And that's why I'm so big on going where you're going to play. And if it's post grad, there's nothing wrong with it. You're playing against college players. You're playing against college teams. You're getting good coaching. You're getting great coaching. If you go to a junior college, some of the greatest players have come out of junior colleges. I mean, that's the bottom line. So I would have thought about it, because I wanted to sign, and I wasn't seeing enough back then. Today's different, but I wasn't seeing enough. And so I didn't get drafted.
Right. Wow. Yeah. Ryan, you got an opinion on that?
Yeah, I was just going to add, it's true. And that was something that Joe was touching on, of being frustrated a little bit, in Dante as well. I don't blame anybody at the time being frustrated, of understanding, but just like we talk about in the professional sports world, is a business. You are judged by your results, how the team does. Big leagues, you got to win. Minor leagues, it's development, but they're going to move on. The college level is the exact same way now, specifically the power D1 schools. They're looking to win games. Their jobs are on the line. That is the reality of it. And I don't blame anybody for that, but it's a really big point that if you really look at around Major League Baseball, yeah, there's a lot of great players and studs that come out of the big schools, but tell you what, there's a lot of great players that come from places that you probably never heard of and went to schools that were so small. And even the JUCO world has changed in the last 2 decades. I mean, heck, I felt like I got back on track going to junior college. I went to JUCO leaving South Carolina, and I had 2 coaches, which again, understaffed, but I had 2 coaches that had a belief back in me that I could get back on track. But I remember watching at South Carolina at that point, again, it's no knock, but I saw guys lose the desire to play and lose the confidence in themselves. And that to me was hard to watch. And I was one of them. This was a conversation I had. And again, this isn't a blame. But one of the conversations that I had when I was leaving South Carolina with one of the coaches was that we believe you have a lot of talent, but I don't have the time to help you develop. We need to win. And I sat there and I went that I need to leave. I need to get out of here. Nothing personal. I appreciate you telling me that now. And I think for a lot of kids nowadays, the cool thing is to go to a place where you feel that you can live out this dream and this fantasy. But the reality is there's no shortcut to get where you want to go. And where you want to go, if you want to be a good player, you got to go get reps. Go to a place that believes in you and is going to give you the opportunity. That's what you want, the opportunity to get better as a player. And that's the true thing. It's fun when I've talked to my teammates in the minors and some of the guys that didn't even have aspirations to play pro ball, but they went to a place where they're able to develop. I'll use this since it's an Oriole. Cedric Mullins, who I know is struggling right now. And right now he's got a couple hits, so I'm happy for Seti. But Seti didn't have really any offers coming out of college, if I remember correctly. So he went to a junior college in North Carolina. And then he ended up signing with Campbell. Campbell's become a better school. And then he gets drafted, 13th round, and then he gets up to the big leagues. But when Cedric talked, he goes, no one really believed in me. And that's a player that ended up going on to be a big league player. So it's just the context of it. I think that people need to understand there's no correct way to get to the big leagues, but there is a way that, just like Dante and Joe have talked about, there are paths that can really derail your future if you let it.
Yeah, I saw a movie, the Ernie Davis movie, and the father and the son were listening to the recruiting pitch from the head coach from Syracuse. And the father finally said to the head coach at Syracuse, "Why are you different?" I hear this from every coach that comes into my room and wants my son to play. Why are you different? You got to figure out where you're going, and that coach that you're playing, why is he different? And why is he going to make a difference in your life? Because if they don't, you're not at the right place, or shame on that coach. And it is so important to end up at the right place at the right time, because that's how you're going to get better. And Billy Crystal, the great actor, said in his show 700 Sundays that you'll never be successful in life until you have someone who loves you says, "I believe in you." And that's what you were talking about, Ryan. Like, if they don't believe in you, and if they're just moving on, don't go there. Take an extra year. Go play. Go get better. Make it to where they can't not have you, opposed to we would like you.
Yeah, that's so. Listen, when you say, go where they're going to believe in you, and look, that's one of the reasons Girardi Sports exists, is because you're getting behind those players, right? And you believe in them, and when they become part of this family is going to lift them up. And we're going to do everything we can to help them understand what it's like on and off the field to truly develop into a well-rounded human being. Forget being a player, a well-rounded human being. And to know that there's people behind them that believe in them. To know that if they sign up with Girardi Sports and they sign up with Post-Grad Edge, that we're getting behind them. We're putting our name behind them to give them that support to say, you know what, Johnny, we believe in you. We believe in your abilities. We believe in where you're going to go. And by God, we're going to give you every ounce of effort and energy that we have to lift you up to that next level, and try to take players there. Try to help them prepare themselves for the NCAA level or the minor leagues or draft, or guess what? Just life. right? And so, we're trying to build and put in programs in place to do that. And I'm going to ask Buddy Biancalana to jump on here for just a quick second, as I know we're running a little bit longer here, but boy, this conversation is going great, and we could go for hours. And we're gonna wrap it in. But Buddy's a World Series champion who can tell you about what it's like to go through being the highest of the high and then quickly being the lowest of the low, and then what that battle is like that both Ryan and Joe and even Dante have talked about, that struggle of having the pressure on you and how to deal with that. So, Buddy, can you take 2 minutes and jump in on that, and your passion for this area of the game and what it means to you?
Sure. Thank you, Chris. Great job, Joe and Ryan and Dante. Really, really great points. So real quickly on my story, I had a zone experience in the World Series. I was a shortstop for the Royals in '85. When we beat the Cardinals, everything just really slowed down for me. I wasn't thinking. Everything I did was very fluid and effortless. It was almost a feeling of not being able to do anything wrong, even if I tried. Almost won the MVP of the series. And we won the series. It was really great. However, 20 months later, I was out of the major leagues because I had no idea what happened in my mind and my body that allowed my full ability to rise to the surface and allow me to play the best baseball of my life from the time I was in the Little League all the way to the end of my career. Long story short, through head injuries and back injuries and neck injuries, I've learned a lot about the brain-body connection. And I now work with athletes, and I've worked in over 13 pro sports and over 20 amateur sports. We've quantified what happens in the brain when an athlete is playing their best, when they have that experience of everything slowing down and not thinking in very fluid, effortless motion with perfect timing. And it's all a matter of how information moves through the brain. And so I'm part of the Post-Grad Edge program, bringing the zone motion training methodology into Post-Grad Edge. And we work with the mental processes, how the brain processes information that allows all the muscles to fire in a synchronistic, harmonious, sequential manner. And also work with the emotional body, because the emotions will undermine everything. So really, we work at the integration level of the physical, the mental, and the emotional, so that our full ability can be accessed. And like I like to say, it's not enough to just be good. You have to understand what it takes to be good, what's happening at a neurophysiological level that is allowing your full ability to be there on a regular basis. It doesn't mean you're going to hit 1,000, but you're going to know how to hit 1,000. And so what happens through the process is the confidence becomes sustainable. And usually for an athlete, and it was the case for me, and Joe, I'm not sure if it was the case for you, but the confidence can vacillate because we really don't know what's taking place when we're playing our best. We typically know what's taking place when we're not playing well. But when we have those great games where it's so easy, we just don't understand the dynamics that is taking place in our entire physiology that allow the full ability to be there. So that's what we've been able to quantify. We've done 6 studies / research projects. And, the more I've learned about Post-Grad Edge, the more I'm realizing, boy, going to college these days, if you want to play, is a real gamble. Now, if you're assured of playing time, go for it. If not, man, is it a gamble. I want to share a story of a client of mine who was a really great junior college hitter and infielder, and decided to take an offer to go play at Fullerton State. Kind of the ego got in the way, played at a big name school, went down there, and they had him running backwards on the beach, and he really hurt a groin real bad, and he wasn't able to play much, and really had no place to go the next year. Finally, a D1 school took him, and he was playing as a senior. And this kid can really play, can really hit, and he can play defense. My belief is he'll play in the big leagues. Somehow he's going to find a way to get there. However, he was a senior, and they had a sophomore playing shortstop and a junior playing third and a junior playing second base. And this kid was better than all of them except maybe the third baseman. But they play him some, and he did fine, but they wouldn't put him in there on a regular basis because of the portal, right? This coach felt that he needed to make sure the sophomore and the junior were going to play, because if they didn't play, he could lose them next year. And he was risking playing them over the senior, who was the better player, for that very reason, because of the portal. So it is really, really a gamble, to play college baseball these days. It's really scary for these guys to commit. And the more I've learned about post-grad edge from you, Chris, the more I'm realizing, wow, this is really an opportunity to buy an extra year, continue to develop, get stronger, get bigger, learn what we're teaching with zone motion, all the good things that all these people are bringing to post-grad edge. It's almost a no-brainer to make that decision.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to sell here, but boy, it is a really, really great opportunity. And to get all the reps that a player needs, live at bats, live innings, and it's a great option that's available right now.
Thanks.
Buddy, you bring up a great point about how you were in the zone. And baseball is a game that if you have to act, you're too slow. Baseball is a game of reactions and how quickly you process information. And that all comes from repetition and competition. And my favorite thing about being a coach and being a father is seeing people have success and have the opportunities to have success. And that's something that my parents always gave. We were very middle class, but I always felt they did whatever it took for me to be successful. And I think in our own little way, that's what Dante is trying to do with Girardi Sports. He wants every kid to have that opportunity to be successful in whatever he does. And he wants to give back, and he wants to make sure, because he saw firsthand at a Division I school, kids didn't have the equipment they needed. Now, he was fortunate that I could give him a lot and that he could provide it to his teammates. But you play in warm weather cities and you go through batting gloves it's like an ice cream cone. They're gone. They're all wet, and
Right.
Socks are all wet. You get athlete's foot, and you don't get the equipment that you need. And there's something about feeling good and playing good, about feeling good about yourself and your physicality and who you are. So I'm really proud of him, and I'm just a dad bragging, and I shouldn't do that, because he really wants to give back. And he has talked about the equipment that gets used by the kids to throw it in a box, and he's going to send it to the Dominican Republic. He's going to send it to Puerto Rico. He's going to send it to Venezuela, because those kids have nothing.
Right.
And that's probably what I'm most proud about. And that's all we want to do. We want to give every child a chance to be successful.
There's so much to that that is part of why we are doing what we're doing. There's no surprise here. We have Dante Girardi on the call, Ryan Ripken on the call, Chase Maddox this call as well. And Chase, does college recruiting and helps players with placement. He was a Division I coach himself at UNLV after his playing career. Joe, you may remember you actually had just a small little hit off of his dad in the World Series. You were talking earlier about not being the best runner in the world. I don't know, legging out that triple was pretty impressive there, right?
Well, I got the backhanded compliment all the time. He runs well for a catcher. That was always a backhanded compliment. My son was much faster than I was.
That's right. That's right. So Chase is on this call as well, and we're really trying to bring that second generation of families into this, to realize there's a link there of passionate people that want to get behind and show that, maybe you're not a Hall of Famer, maybe you're not a 15-year big leaguer, but there's a place in this game for you if you want to survive in it, and it can teach valuable life lessons, and to learn from those that have come before us. And to be able to share that with these players on a daily basis, to help them understand that there's a path forward, and whatever it may be, and looking through their NCAA side of things, and making sure that we're preparing them and eligibility wise, and that they're taking the right courses, and we're getting them set up for success on that side of it, so that we're not just a training environment, right? We're getting them prepared academically as well. We're helping them with all these skills that we're talking about tonight. We're preparing the bodies. We're helping them get recovered. And one last guest that I want to bring in right now is TJ Saunders, because we're talking passionately about preparing the body and recovering the body. TJ was a longtime trainer of the Atlanta Braves and the Detroit Tigers, and funny enough, old TJ, you won't believe where I'm sitting right now and broadcasting this from is Thurman Munson Stadium in Canton, Ohio. I'm sitting in where it all started for us back in the Frontier League in the early 2000s, where we hooked up. And TJ's been a fantastic advisor ever since, working and training players. But there's no more passionate person to trust me, when we're coaches, we're out there coaching, and he's like, nope, you got to recover. Nope, you got to take the day off. Nope, you got to. We wanted to kill him because he's pulling our guys, but we know that was best. And so we want to bring TJ just to talk real quick about that recovery. TJ.
Chris, thank you, buddy. Wow. Thurman Munson Memorial Stadium way back in the day. Joe spoke eloquently about the repetitions and what it takes to become a great player in the game. And I think what a lot of people don't realize is just what those repetitions add up to. At the high school level, a player plays 28 to 30 games. Division I level, they play 62 regular season games. In A-ball in the minor leagues, they play 140 games. In AAA, they play 150 games. In the big leagues, you're playing 162 games in 178 days. Think about what that toll is going to take on your body as a player. Doubling the amount of games you're playing from high school to college, almost tripling from college to the minor leagues, and then the amount of emotional and physical stress put on your body from the minor leagues to the big leagues. Without recovering, you can't put your best tool on the field, which is your physical ability. At every level, I think we're seeing a debt of recovery in athletes. And I know when I was a young man, I thought I was invincible. I could, eat garbage and try to perform my best, and it catches up with you. And at Postgrad Edge, one of the things that I'm passionate about making sure happens is that players put back on the field their best effort. And the only way to do that is through recovery. You can't get a good BP if you didn't have a good meal, you didn't restore your nutrients, your calories, your protein in your body, you didn't sleep well, you haven't taken care of the aches and pains that over time through repetition become injuries. An injured player is no good to his team. I had a coach once tell me the best ability a player can have is availability. And if you're not on the field, you're not developing. So taking care of your body, taking care of your nutrition, focusing on your sleep, focusing on the mental aspect of recovery, coming down off of that adrenaline high, finding that Zen state, that relaxation to recover, to come back and perform the next day is incredibly important. And what I'm seeing with younger players today is they don't know how to take care of their bodies. That post-grad edge, that's one of the things that we're going to teach the athletes is how to recover, how to eat properly, how to hydrate, how to look for things that are aching and be honest with not only themselves, but their staff members who might be able to ward off an injury that's coming with some corrective exercises, some rehab and stretching techniques. Those things are incredibly important. And I think it's an area that is underutilized by today's athlete.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, obviously, with that. And, what Dante is doing with Girardi Sports and providing the proper level of equipment for players, it's something that you don't think about, the proper fitting batting gloves, right? How much of a difference can that make in the quality of the BP session, the training session that player is getting, just by having the right BGs on? Forget all the other stuff that goes along with it, right? But just even the right BGs, you're not getting those blisters. You're being able to take those reps. You're being able to do those things. That ties into, in order to recover the body from performance, you have to prepare the body. And that's where Dante and Girardi Sports come in with the proper level of equipment, that these players are going to get on a monthly basis, delivered directly to them. I can't stress enough how much of a difference that can actually make that nobody thinks about.
Chris, that reminded me of a story. When I was in low A with Detroit, so he borrowed a pair of BGs that were too big for him. And so obviously they didn't fit his hand. There was some movement on the bat. He went out, took his AB, broke his hamate because the bat rotated more than it should have. He ended up fracturing his hamate. He was out for the remainder of the season. Properly fitting equipment is paramount of importance for being able to play the game safely. Whether it's BGs that prevent you from getting blisters, the right fitting shoes, or properly cushioned socks that aren't worn down to prevent you from getting blisters on your feet. These things keep players out of games, and they're such ticky-tack. But a guy with a blister on his ankle that can't run, he's out for a week to 10 days. A pitcher with a blister on his hand because he's not using rosin or he's not taking care of his body. Joe, you can attest to this. A pitcher with a blister on his finger, he might be out in 2 weeks.
Yeah, you're right.
These things are all you don't think about it, but they're big things in the development of a young player.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that's why we're so passionate to be partnered with Girardi Sports and be able to offer that to these players so that they do get the right socks, the right BGs, the tape, all that stuff that's tied to it to be able to have them perform. So listen, everybody, we've taken a little bit extra time here, and I want to make sure we have some time for some questions. I saw some that popped through on the chat. If you do happen to have a question, you can raise your hand there, and we'll be able to go to you. But we want to make a little bit of time here for some questions if you have those, and we'll go from there. Let me look on the chat here, and I know we had some come through. So let me pull that up. So there's a question in here from Andrew that says, with what we all know is happening at the highest levels of the game in college right now, with the portal, salaries, NIL, is the Jay Johnson interview that's on Twitter right now about developing the program. Development at the level is essentially gone. Jay said it, that even though that is what he excels at, the landscape has changed and it won't be changing soon. Won't JUCO and post-grad schools go to the farm system to four-year schools very soon? So I guess what Drew's asking there is Joe, can you see a future where post-grad or the JUCO level is essentially Class A level? And where are we in that? With minor league teams being contracted and that's gone, and now Power 5 being their own pro league eventually. How do you see that happening?
Yeah, I see it as similar to what they do in Latin America, where there are academies, right? And there are players that are basically rookie ball that are developing to get to A ball and to get to AA. And I could see it. I mean, it's always changing because there's so much value going into the big league club and everything to help those players perform that they have to make cuts somewhere. I mean, I think about it. When I was in the big leagues, there were 6 coaches. There's 10, 11 coaches on a staff now. There's 20 analysts on a staff. That money has to come from somebody else, right? So a lot of times it's not going into the younger players, and they're not drafting as many players and having as many players in the minor leagues. So what it becomes is post-grad and JUCO. It's just a lower level that they've cut out. And it gives kids an opportunity to get seen as they get older and they get mature and they become better ball players and have a chance to get to the minor leagues and to the big leagues.
Sure. That ties into this next question that's in the chat. Actually, it's from Scott Baker, who happens to be our head coach in our Las Vegas location, and is a former big leaguer with Oakland. And but he has a question for you. It says, most high school kids don't understand having a routine, and at Post-Grad Edge, we want to teach them a routine. Do you see most big leaguers have one, and how important is routine?
Well, if they don't, we give them one. And I can tell you that when kids come to big league camp, there's 65 players come to big league camp. You break with 26, so you have to send 39 players down. We make sure that they have a routine, like they have a hitting routine, because a lot of them don't understand what they really need to work on. They get caught up in watching other people and doing things. Some guys need to work on extension. Some guys need to work on hitting the ball the other way. Some guys need to work on pull. So we make sure players have routines, because I believe routine does two things. It gets you loose and it gives you confidence that you're prepared. And the last thing, and I know Buddy could say this probably better than I could, is you want any doubt in your brain. You know, you don't want doubt that, man, I didn't get those swings in and I'm not sure if I'm ready to go, or I didn't get the proper stretch in and I didn't know if I'm ready to go. Even as simple as my gloves are all sweaty and they don't feel right, or my fielding glove is too loose and it doesn't feel right. If you have that little bit of doubt, there's a better chance that you're not going to succeed. So to me, it's really important that we do everything we can to make sure kids have a routine and they're confident when they take the field, because you're going to fail at some point. You know, you may go 1 for 4, but the great thing about our game is we always have a chance the next day to redeem ourselves. That's the great thing. And on the field, you get a chance to do that.
100%, Joe. And the game has never been more competitive than it is now. It's never been tougher to hit because of high velo, high spin rate, late movement, the sweeper. And the game's never been tougher. And so the subtleties, like you're saying, in the mind, the routines, the preparation, the whole physiology, the subtleties have never been more important than they are now. So you're right on.
And as Joe and Buddy both said, preparation for the game, having a routine and being prepared, having a routine for recovery post game is just as important. And I like to tell young players, especially in the minor league, when I spent my time at the lower levels, you're putting money back in the bank. The time that you spend in the training room or in the weight room post game is reinvesting in your body, reinvesting to go out tomorrow and do it all over again. And a number of young players coming out of high school, collegiate levels, don't have routines to take care of themselves, whether it's pitchers doing arm care, catchers getting in the cold tubs, using any of the wonderful modalities we have now, like the compression boots, the ice compression sleeves. Any of those things are available, and guys taking advantage of them, they don't know how to use them. So creating a routine and creating an awareness of what's available is just as important for recovery.
The routines are what's important. And one of the things that we're doing at Post Grad Edge is every player has the app, and that app is their routine. It tracks everything that they do. We report on everything. Parents can view it. Coaches can view it. Whoever they give access to can see that. And we know what their routine is every day. We know what we're going to hold them accountable to every day. And so everything that you guys are hitting, and you guys didn't even know that. So everything that you're hitting on is spot on and what we're trying to do for players. And, you know, and one of the things is about providing those opportunities for those players. And, you know, one of the things that is brought up here as well is that, you know, we talk about the Division I level, and you guys touched on it a little bit with roster sizes and the coaches and, you know, just the ability to get to them. That trickles down, right? And, you know, at the junior college level, you see programs that have 60, 70 man rosters. There's JV teams at these levels now, right? So how are, as a manager, as a coach, how are you even able to fathom, how do I get 70 guys development time? Is it even possible? Because I know as a junior college coach, we limit our roster to 35, and it's tough to get to 35 guys, and we got 4 coaches, and it's tough to get 35 guys to work in. How can these coaches even have the ability and the time to get to those guys? Where do you see that playing itself out with these rosters?
Well, fortunately, in the big leagues, which I've spent most of my time, we just hire more coaches. Spring training, we bring more coaches. We bring the AAA manager, the AAA hitting coach, the AAA pitching coach, the AA manager, the AA pitching coach, the AA hitting coach, 2 extra strength coaches, because players need individual attention. They bring 4 or 5 extra trainers. It's what they do until their spring training starts and the size of camp gets smaller. So the only way to give 75 people the attention that they need to develop correctly in all areas, whether it's the weight room, I'm a big believer that we should call the training room the maintenance room, because it's what keeps you on the field, right? Or the cage, or, you know, the pitching lab, or whatever it is. You have to have enough bodies and people who know what they're doing. And the players have to trust them that what they say they believe in, or you're not going to get the best. So I've been fortunate where I've coached, 2 of the 3 have been big markets and they spend money.
Right. Absolutely. And the Division I level, look, they're just now figuring out, okay, they get an extra paid assistant. They're figuring out these director of ops titles and things to get extra guys in there, but they still, it's 4 or 5
They don't
guys.
have enough.
Yeah,
they don't have enough.
Not enough. And so, when we look at things at the post-grad level, we're able to provide the staffing and the partnerships with folks like yourselves that are able to really create individualized plans. And I think that's what's huge, is being able to be individualized, not a one-size-fits-all cookie-cutter example for players. And we need to be able to really look at that individual and what he needs to be able to advance forward. So, listen, I appreciate all the time that you've taken. Any last parting gifts? If you could just tell us, Joe, Dante, Ryan, TJ, Buddy, any of you guys, if you want to just tell us, what is your one piece of advice, your one takeaway, that if somebody ends this call today and thinks, man, if I had that one piece of advice to go into my gap year between my high school year, my college year, post-grad, what would that one piece of advice be for somebody?
I would tell the players to get the most out of it. Take advantage of the situation, the opportunity that you have. Because the one thing that you have to do to be successful in life is every time you have an opportunity, you have to get as much out of it as you can. And I'm not saying that you abuse it, but take advantage of what is out there for you to help reach your dreams. We can always work. We can't always play ball.
Yeah, and I
got a limited amount of time. You can work the rest of your life, but you can't always play the ball. So if you have that dream, do whatever it takes to accomplish that dream.
And I'd like to say that anytime you can buy time in life, it's worth doing, right? Time can really be our friend if we know what to do with it. And this is an opportunity to buy some time in a very, very competitive environment.
Ryan, you got any last minute takeaways for somebody on the development side and things that you've seen? What would you give somebody, that one piece of advice?
Well, honestly, I think, to me, I don't want to word this. We understand, we talked to so much about with failing, and I think the biggest part is it's a combination of patience with yourself and understanding that there's a path that's going to continue on as far as you want to take it. And where it goes, we don't know. But the combination of being patient with yourself and understanding that the journey it's a lot of different ways to get to where you hope to go. That was one thing I look back. I had a thought in my mind. I had to do it this one way. And I had to do it this way or I wasn't going to be successful. And I felt it was, well, if I'm not playing as a freshman, if I'm not accomplishing these goals, simplify it. If you have a chance between high school and college, learn a lot about yourself. Be patient with yourself, because a lot changes from when you're 18 to 19, 18 to 22. And there's a big reason why a lot of players, when they figure it out moving forward, if they get the chance, it's because they learn as they go. But it's just as important to start that process now. And ultimately, that can be that year for you. That can be the thing that separates you 5 years down the road.
DJ, you got something for somebody to take away?
I kind of want to piggyback what Ryan just said. Tell a quick story. When I was in Lower Detroit, I had a young player by the name of Nick Castellanos on my club. Nick went 0 for the month of April. At the end of the season, tied the team record for hits in a season. And in doing such, he learned a lot about himself and he grew up. And I think young players, from my perspective, be open to learning about themselves, learning about what the game does to their body, what the game does when you have to play 140 games, and open to being receptive to trying new things from my perspective for recovery, and take advantage of what's available. Instead of cutting out of the clubhouse, being the first guy out of the clubhouse, take advantage of going into, and Joe, I love this, the maintenance room. I love that. Go into the maintenance room and take care of your body and put your money back in the bank.
Love it. Dante, what do you want to leave people with?
It's a game. If they're not having fun, dude, it's going to be a lot harder than it is. You know, at the end of the day, it's just a game, and really simplify it down to the core of you're playing a game, same game you played when you were 6, 7, 8, 9, all the way up through. It's just a game. And I think, you know, we get away from that too much. So enjoy every moment of it.
Amen.
I love it. And so just taking that together, you know, what we heard is we want to allow the guys to dream. We want to allow them to accomplish that dream. Understand that we have an opportunity to buy a little bit of extra time for that dream. Understand what that path is that will tie that all together so that they can really know what they are as a player and as a person and understand themselves. And then the opportunity that we can provide for somebody at Post Grad Edge, the opportunity that we can provide with proper training gear and apparel and equipment through Girardi Sports, the mental side, the training side, those sort of things that we can provide, I guarantee you these players will have an opportunity to accomplish those dreams that we're going to allow them to see and allow them to have. Because my goal for everybody is to make tomorrow's dreams a reality, is to make the dreams for these players real and tangible so that they can feel it. Now, the thing is, it's up to them to go get it. So we can show them the path, we can help them on the path, but they got to take the steps. So we're going to put them in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing. And here's the deal. It's our job, everybody on this call, to get players in the right place at the right time. It's their job to do the right thing. And that's what we did tonight. We brought everything together. We did our part. We put people in the right place at the right time. It's time to go do the right thing. And the right thing is being part of Post Grad Edge and Girardi Sports. Dialing into the Ryan Ripken show. We put the link in there in the chat for everybody. Get on, listen to some O's coverage, and listen, folks. I'm so proud. I'm so excited for this opportunity. I can't wait to share it with you. Thanks for joining us tonight, and we'll see you on the.
Have a good night. Bye, everyone.
Good night, everyone.